My name again is Julia Sarreal, and I'm quite honored to be doing this. Yerba Mate is my new research project, and it was generously sponsored by the Institute for Humanities Research. And I hope some of you, most all of you, got to see the different yerba paraphernalia back there, the different types of yerba mate. I had some business cards from Tienda Latina, which has an amazing selection of yerba mate here in the valley, including I got ones flavored with coffee and guarana. So if you ever want to get yerba mate, it's a reasonable price. You can also see some of the different bombillas, the straws, the gourds, or the cow's horns that are used to hold the yerba mate. There's a raffle also over there for some yerba mate gourds. I was very fortunate. My previous research has been about the Guarani missions, and I have never gotten any sort of sponsorship or anything. But because I'm doing yerba mate, I was able to get Guayaquil, the brand in the United States that's marketing yerba mate, to help sponsor this event, and they donated some couple $100 worth of different stuff that you've been seeing and consuming here. I am in no way promoting Guayaquil, but since they're willing to give some stuff for this event, I'm more than willing to offer it. But please, I'm not promoting it by any means. So I want to give a brief PowerPoint presentation, a little bit about yerba mate, myself, and how I got into this project, and my focus as primarily a colonial Latin American historian. So first of all, I thought these were kind of interesting. Famous people drinking yerba mate. Einstein, this is not photoshopped. He actually did go on a trip to Rio de la Plata, and he's holding yerba mate. If you type in Einstein, you can see this image. Also, of course, the famous Argentine Che. And the most recently famous is the Pope Francis, who is Argentine, and there are numerous images of him drinking yerba mate. But my research is from the colonial period, starting in the colonial period, and I'm really interested in the origins of yerba mate, the Indian origins, and also how it spread amongst Spaniards, mestizos, and other peoples. So you'll have to pardon my poor reproductions.
What a title?
Sure, if we want to have that, that'd be good. So, when you Google yerba mate and 18th century or 19th century or colonial period, yerba mate has really been picking up in popularity in the United States, and it was really hard to find good images. When I do other things for my other searches for my colonial Latin American course, I can easily find images. But here, with yerba mate, it's just inundated with modern images. So I had to get this copy from a book that doesn't even say anything about it. But you can see a woman, colonial woman, obviously probably quite wealthy with her dress, but she's drinking yerba mate. This one is supposed to be a child, I don't know what it is again, but with yerba mate, the reciprocal there. And Paraguay holds a close place in my heart, having lived there for 2 years. You can see here, this is the ruler of Paraguay, 1814 to 1840, Francia, and one of the most famous images of him is holding yerba mate. Yerba mate order. Yerba mate also gives us a really unique window onto themes such as gender. Here we can see a woman serving yerba mate. Class. We can see a difference in class here among these people sharing yerba mate. And race. This is an image of what I found on the internet was gauchos in the Triple Frontier area of Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. And it's still widely consumed today. You go into a supermarket in Argentina and you'll see rows and rows of yerba mate. The same thing is true in Uruguay, presumably southern Brazil. This is in Paraguay, also seeing just shelves and shelves of yerba mate. So I first got interested in yerba mate and was first exposed to it when I was a Peace Corps volunteer there in 1998. And this is one of the families, a couple families that I worked with, and it's a cold winter day, kind of like here with no heating and no insulation, and you spend the afternoon, this was the evening time, and you also spend the morning sharing mate. In the summertime, although this is still a little bit cool weather from their jackets, but in the afternoon, having tereré. In Paraguay, they drink it both hot and cold. Another interesting thing that I was exposed to in Paraguay as a Peace Corps volunteer was traditional means of processing yerba and producing it. And so this is Don Melchor, a good friend, and he has produced this structure for toasting the yerba mate. So you have to cut the leaves, bring them in from the forest, cut them to size, and then you put them on this structure to toast, and I forget exactly how long that lasted. Here you can see another image, and this is looking underneath. You have a fire, and then that structure, that dirt mound, clay mound is hot, and it toasts it for like 24 or 36 hours. What's really interesting, Melchor has now moved. He doesn't produce yerba anymore. And what was really interesting are these are images from, I believe, from the 19th century. But even in colonial period, they talk about these same ways of processing the yerba mate. And so I thought that was really a unique opportunity. Here are some more images of a larger scale production of yerba mate today. So the origins of yerba mate, that's one of the big things that I'm interested in. So the Institute for Humanities Research generously sponsored me to go to the Archive of the Indies in Seville this summer to research the origins. So studying yerba mate, going to Madrid, I went to Madrid and Seville. It really doesn't make sense. Why would I go to Spain? Well, that was it was part of the Spanish Empire, and a lot of documentation went back to Spain about the early origins of yerba mate. This is the Jesuits were really active in this region, and so they have a lot of good documentation. The origins of yerba mate go back to the Guarani Indians, and here one of the historian of the Jesuit order in 1730 said the Indians used said yerba before becoming Christians, but with moderation. Who discovered the virtues that are today attributed to yerba is still unknown. And with the passing of time, some give it very noble origins, and others assign it to the most vile origins that can be imagined. So it was very contentious, yerba mate. What's also interesting is the early explorers in Paraguay don't speak much about yerba mate. They, I think, are so trying to survive. They're trying to get food. Everything is new and foreign. That yerba mate really doesn't attract their attention. It attracts the attention of Spaniards when it becomes more widely consumed. Again, here this is another Jesuit writing about the Guarani missions in 1667. That's a little bit over around 60 years after the founding of the first mission, saying that yerba mate is so necessary for the Indians. So it's obviously has indigenous origins. And then it spread. Yerba mate spread beyond the Indians. And here is, this is another Jesuit, 1673, describing how yerba mate became the most important export of this region, or product of this region. For a long time, sugar and cotton, both produced in small quantities, were the chiefest wealth, till the leaves of certain trees growing in marshy grounds, commonly called the herb of Paraguay, began to be in esteem. These leaves, they dry them at the fire and reduce to powder, then mixing it with warm water, the Spaniards and Indians, both men and women, drink of it several times a day, and vomiting it up with all they have eaten, they find it creates an appetite. Many things are reported concerning the virtue of this powder or herb, for they say if you cannot sleep, it will compose you too. If you are lethargic, it drives away sleep. If you are hungry, it satisfies. If your meat does not digest, it causes an appetite. It refreshes after weariness and drives away melancholy and several diseases. Yeah, the wonder drug. There was a lot of attributes, a lot of unknowns about yerba mate, and here are just some of the descriptions. And it's interesting because if you search yerba mate today, there is a lot of talk about all these, that it's I forget what Guayaquil's slogan is, but that it's a healthy caffeine.
Come to life.
Yeah. It was also seen as as a vice. Those who once used themselves to it cannot easily leave it, for they affirm their strength fails them when they want it and cannot live long, and so great slaves are they to this slender diet, that they will almost sell themselves rather than want wherewithal to purchase it. The wiser sort, though moderately used, it strengthens and brings other advantages, will hardly make use of it. And if immoderately used, it causes drunkenness and breeds distempers, as too much wine does. Yeah, there were a lot of people who talked about it being a vice. What I also found in the archives in Spain this summer was a whole they were going to they decided to tax yerba mate, and there was an investigation to see about the consequences of this. And some of the questions were, how is it consumed, and how do people prioritize it as far as what they're spending their money on? And there was interview after interview talking about how this should be considered a food, and that people will spend, they'll buy yerba mate rather than buy food to eat. That this is such a necessity, or one could say a vice, because they wouldn't eat, so they could have yerba mate. What's also interesting is the Jesuits, although they said earlier, they talked about the importance of yerba mate to the Indians, to the running of the missions, they also acknowledged, they also had a flip side. So the superior general of the Jesuit order, the head of the Jesuit order, in 1732, so about 75 years after really talking about the importance of yerba mate, he orders that that yerba mate not be consumed by anybody in the colleges, by any of the Jesuits, anybody studying at a Jesuit college, any Jesuits or anybody studying there, that it was such a bad vice along with tobacco that it had to be prevented. So although they're allowing it in the missions, they're selling great quantities of yerba mate, they're also saying that the Jesuits themselves should not be consuming it. So the round table. Here are, unfortunately, our Uruguayan participant is sick, so she was not able to be here. But if we can turn on the lights, let's see. Okay. I tried to get people from each of the countries that consume yerba mate to talk about yerba, and so maybe we can start. You can see their countries here, and maybe you guys can introduce yourself. Start with introduce yourself and explain why you're taking over an hour out of your day. Presumably you have other things to do. Why did you think it was worthwhile to come here and talk to us about yerba mate?
I think this is fascinating because there is a rhetoric of mate, and I don't know exactly how it works. But for instance, if you were a gaucho, and this goes back to the colonial times, and a china, a girl offered you a mate, it had different meanings in terms of what else they put in, you see. So you could be orange. If they didn't like you, they would give you an amargo, a bitter one, that was it, you see. So, and there were other things, so there's a whole rhetoric of this mate that may have been lost, you see. So that on the one hand, and that's why I'm happy that Julia is doing this. And on the other, I think that there is a rebirth of mate, because my daughter said that you could get it as an energy drink here, and I was very surprised, you see. So for me, mate is something that we do on holidays and going back to Argentina, because my sister-in-law starts her day with mate. They're from the east, from Santa Fe. And she's exceptionally thin, so I've often wondered if that had something to do with it, you see. And it's a way to go across class, because it's the maid, you know, that Loseba that prepares it. And it's a way to build community, because, you know, everyone else is sharing it, you see. And then they make the best mate, because I certainly can't, but it's with herbs and things that you don't find in the real mate, you see. So, you know, there is a touch to it, and I think that is very interesting. I don't want to take all, you know, the time, but then you go to the seaside, to the beach, and then you start with tereré, which is cold mate. So it's never, you know, out of your day. And I think that is very important, given, you know, the centuries that have gone by.
Cynthia, can you say where you are, introduce yourself and just say where in Argentina you're from?
Oh, so I screwed up.
It's important because we have people from different places.
So I'm from Córdoba, Alta Gracia, a Jesuit, what would you call it? A Jesuit Anitancia. It was a farm. So it was built in 1662. So that's where I come from.
Yeah, let's start this way and then we'll open up
Okay,
to.
so Gustavo Fishman from Buenos Aires, Argentina, working here at the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. I don't know any single Argentinian anywhere that hates mate. I don't know anyone. And I don't know any Uruguayan that would hate mate, or Paraguayan. I know quite a few Brazilians. And I like mate, and I think that is a really cool research project and a really wonderful initiative. So why to spend an hour here? Because it was a very cool invitation. And you know, there is another group of people that drink mate that are surprisingly. And in Phoenix, if you want to get mate, it used to be that you have to go to Lily's, the Pan-Oriental, Pan-African, Pan-American supermarket. Absolutely wonderful place to go. Anybody wants to do research there, please tell me. But the others are the Istanbul market and
Hajibala.
So the Middle Eastern communities of exiles also drink mate. So next one, we have to bring somebody from Hajibala.
So I am Milagros Singoni. I am in the design school. I am also from Argentina, from Neuquén, that is the Patagonia in the south. Why I choose to be an hour here. I wake up with this, and usually when I arrive from work at 5-6 p.m., my husband and I drink this again. And usually we have dinner by 8, and by 11 we are drinking this again. So one of those ones. But also, I think that to me, mate is about friendship and conversation. It's something that it comes with the culture of the place. If you don't need appointments with your friends in Argentina. You just stop by. Sometimes you announce that I am on my way to your home, and the answer will always be, I am going to put the water for the mate. That's basically, it's like a conversation always goes with mate, but it's also your own companion when you're standing very late at night and nobody else is there. It's also your companion, so it's the thing that is about friendship and conversation, and it's the thing that doesn't make you feel alone, almost like the radio. And the other very interesting thing is, like, when you want to start a conversation, usually you offer, if let's say that I am in the beach or in the park and I think that the person next to me can be cool and I would like to start knowing a little bit more about that person, then you would offer a mate. And it's the thing, for those of you who don't know, and I don't know if you have been observing us, we pour the water and we share the same straw, right? For Americans, we're like, oh my God, when we use the fancy straw. for us, it's fascinating, but I learned more about the mate in the United States than in Argentina. In Argentina, if you're born, then you have to drink it. You never question what it does. But I learned here that because you share the straw, then our immune system is much more stronger than typical people. And there is also...
I agree.
In front of you, so,
We use it as lotion, no?
you know, when people is like, oh, I drink from the water, don't worry, we share straws with everybody, so it's okay. And the last thing, that is also that we are not afraid of sharing it with any stranger. So it happened to me that I was in Rome, and it was freezing cold, and we were leaving the Parthenon, and I saw this mate right there in the distance, and I was with American friends. And I went running to the mate, and I asked the guy, can I have one? I'm very cold. And my American friends were like, did you know them? Why are you sharing a straw with a stranger? So for us, it's the thing, like if you are drinking it, then we may be from the same planet. So it's totally okay. We don't need more than that. If you are drinking it, then I'm going to join your conversation. So.
My name is Enrique Lleiros. I'm from Paraguay, and I'm here studying mathematics. Mate, well, the invitation first. Like, I grew up with drinking tereré, that's a cold version of mate. And remembering when I was a kid, I have a friend that I'm from the city, and my friend was from outside the city. And he would just go to the garden and just start picking plants, the roots, and then just start like breaking them down and just put in the water. And he just knew which herbs were good to drink with mate. That was like amazing for me. And it's always the youngest one that say about mate. So if you're the youngest one in the group, you have to be the one pouring the mate for everybody. Or it's like a social thing. I remember walking to school every day. There was a security guard in the corner, and I would just stop by, and he would be drinking tereré, and he would just give it to me. Or anybody that I stopped by anywhere in the streets, if I wanted some, they would just, yeah, drink it. It's okay. So yeah, it's part of the culture that you like born with it.
I'm Diego Vera. I'm also from Paraguay. And kind of like Enrique, you don't really give much thought to it. Like, that's why I'm always like kind of. It never actually hit me until I took like my wife to Paraguay. Actually, just this past this past September, I took her, and she noticed that everybody, everywhere, and I'm talking about everybody everywhere, has a tereré like equipment, like, you know, like a thermo, like has it somewhere.
And this, you're missing the mate, right?
Like we did, like I took her one day to do paperwork, and like in every single office, there was someone drinking it, or someone had it in their desk. It was like, and she like made a comment of like, nobody, like, why is it such an important part? Like, people forget their purses, but they don't forget their one player thermal. It's just so, like, such an intricate part of us that you don't really think about it until somebody else points it out. I grew up with it. It was always like, in my case, it was always around the kitchen, like very early in the morning before going to school. My mom was always there already, drinking mate with my abuela, my grandma just like talking, and it was, like they said, it's such an inclusive social component. Like, sit down, let's have a few mates, let's talk about what's going to happen today, let's talk about our day, or at the end of the day. It's just such a, I don't know, it's like, I can't imagine our lives, like, those scenarios, those situations without it. Like, it's so, it's hard to explain, but we're just so used to it that.
La wampa. If you go anywhere, like, they will make wampas out of the yogurt thing, the plastic yogurt. That will be their wampa. If you go to like a construction, the workers there will be drinking out of that. It doesn't really matter what you're using, just whatever. And then instead of the thermal, they will use like a plastic bottle. They'll cut it in half and then put water in and just serve it.
Yep.
So
and people drink it anyways, the same way. And there's no class, there's no gender, there's no anything. Like, it's completely
just to support that, in Argentina, because the water temperature, when it's hot, it has to be 90 degrees. It's before it boils, 90 degrees Celsius. So if you go to any gas station, because you're on the road trip, you have huge thermos, but bigger than me, that are with the precise temperature. So you will see people they are not putting gas in their car, you are just refilling your water in the thermo and then you continue the road trip. And that's part because it's the thing. And we also have the one that is over there, the purse, I don't know if someone can lift it, the one that is leather, brown. That's our kind of purse to move. So, exactly. And you can carry it like a purse. Usually here you have the thermo and the mate, and then we also go with this everywhere, right? So that's the thing that has usually the mate and the thermo over here, which is part of us. So.
Okay. Oh, I'm David William Foster, and I am not Latin American, but I work in Argentina and Brazil. And so I'm here because I'll go anywhere, anytime to speak on Argentina or Brazil, no matter what the topic is. I like tereré. It's very good, which is the mate cocido frío, that is the mate prepared as iced tea, because it's very refreshing here during the summer months. And so when I have a rush of nostalgia and I need something to take me back to Argentina, although tereré is Paraguay more than Argentina, but it's the mate. And so I like to prepare the tereré. But you fix it like iced tea. But I must warn you, don't do it as sun tea, because that's very dangerous. You cannot prepare it as sun tea. You can't prepare sun tea as sun tea either. You put it in the refrigerator, okay, and just let it seep. Because if you do it as sun tea, that creates microbes that are very, very dangerous. So keep that in mind. Now, my interest here is twofold. I do urban studies on Latin America, principally focused on the city of Buenos Aires. And one of the singular characteristics of Argentine culture is this omnipresence of the mate, no matter how sophisticated the context gets. Because you see, the porteños, the people of Buenos Aires, like to claim that Buenos Aires is the Paris of South America. That, of course, is pure hype. But nevertheless, there is a substantial quantitative difference. There's a substantial quantitative difference between the level of life in Buenos Aires and anywhere else in Latin America. But no matter how high you go on the social scale, no matter how high you go on the intelligentsia scale, everybody's drinking mate, this indigenous drink, right? It may be in very fancy equipment, right, such as silver or even gold mates, but nevertheless, it is something that it pervades the Argentina and then therefore the urban culture of Buenos Aires, no matter how much the Argentines feel that they have been punished by God for being born in Buenos Aires and not in Paris. By the way, Borges I don't think like mate. There's no one more Argentine than Borges, but I can't imagine. What?
Messi, the soccer player.
Well, I don't even know soccer. Okay, all right. So there you are. But I don't think Borges, who couldn't have been more Argentine, drank mate. There's a very famous Argentine novel called Rayuela by Julio Cortázar from 1963, if my memory serves me correctly, in which this group of Argentine intellectual refugees are in Paris. And they spend their time, of course, taking advantage of the cafe life and so on and so forth of Paris, all the cultural icons of Paris, but they spend an awful lot of time sitting around and wondering how they're going to get dulce de leche and mate. Dulce de leche is a sort of caramel topping that is consumed in Argentina. And now you can get dulce de leche and mate in Paris, but you couldn't in the 1960s. So it was a big deal for them, for someone to arrive from Argentina with a package of mate and a can of dulce de leche. My other interest is that the cultivation of mate, okay, the farming of mate is one of the most horrendous stories of human exploitation in Latin American history. And actually, it's the British and the Americans who really began to extensively commercialize mate in the early 20th century. Certainly, you can understand the British, it's a variant of tea, of course. And so this exploitation by the Americans and by the British create a horrendous plantation system in which the mensues, the peones, are terrorifically exploited in the production of mate for this growing world consumption. And there is an important production of literature on this topic. No text more famous than the great Paraguayan author Augusto Roa Bastos' collection of short stories, El trueno entre las hojas, the thunder among the leaves. And the leaves he's talking about are the mate leaves that you showed. There were three types of exploitation in Paraguay, and continue to be. One is the obrajes or fábricas, which are the wood sawing mills. The other are the yerbales, the plantations of the yerba, and the third are the ingenios, the sugar production units that Paraguay shares with Brazil historically. And Roa Bastos wrote extensively on this terrible exploitation of the Paraguayan peones to satisfy this international need. There's a very famous novel of social realism. Roa Bastos was a socialist, or perhaps more even a communist than a socialist, and he wrote in the 50s, his novel was published in 1953. Earlier than that, a decade before, Alfredo Varela published a book called Rio Oscuro, Dark River. And that was made into a film in 1952 under the title of Las Aguas Bajan Turbias. The water flows in a turbulent fashion. There must be a more elegant way of saying that in English, but I can't think of it. And if we had time, or if we do have time at the end, I'd like to show the opening clip of Las Aguas Bajan Turbias, because this was made in the context of Varela's interest in socialist writing, and at the same time in the Peronista government's interest in sponsoring filmmaking projects that had to do with the social issues that Peronismo was concerned about, one of which was the exploitation of agricultural workers. Now, the mate spans the border between Paraguay and Argentina. So the film is probably filmed in Argentina. I don't really know where it's filmed, but it doesn't matter. It's the same geographic region. And in this region, the men are essentially shanghaied into going and working on these yerba plantations. And this was the typical, what's the word we use? Indentured sort of thing. Well, company store system, okay? You had to buy everything at the company store, the idea of paying with your salary, but your salary never quite caught up with what you owed the company store. And so this was essentially indenture for life, which meant a relatively short lifespan, given the way in which these men were exploited. And the idea of Las Aguas Bajan Turbias is the bodies that float down the river of the men who have either died because of the labor exploitation, or who have been killed by the capataces, the overseers, for rebelling against the backbreaking work. Right? So this is a whole cultural production in Argentina and Paraguay. There's not so much cultural production in Brazil because the yerba mate phenomenon is confined to the far south of Brazil. You don't find yerba mate in Rio or in São Paulo or in Bahia. This is confined to the most southern states of Brazil. But there is this enormous cultural production that I've had the good fortune of working with. So, thank you.
Our Brazilian, who was hard to find.
All right, guys. My name is Joel Pizarro. I remember growing with my father and mom when we were a kid and drinking the yerba mate. And said that we use they put it for us a little bit of sugar on it to get sweet, so it was a little different. So we grew up with that, me and my family, all the family. After that, we moved to another state. Actually, I was born in Rio Grande do Sul, just like he said, South Brazil. And we moved to a little bit north, is hotter. Yeah, center. And actually, we drink different kind of Yerba mate with tereré. So it was, one year was hot, another year was cold. So it was very interesting. And thank you very much for inviting me to be here and all those people drink. Keep drinking.
Gotta represent.
That's right.
When I asked some of my other Brazilian friends about do they drink yerba mate, do they know anybody who drinks yerba mate, and or Sarreal, and they're all like, no, it's disgusting, no. So it is definitely a region.
The ones I know at work that I told you about, they're like, no.
They will try it once and then.
For a personal question that I have, and I'm going to open it up to the audience to have answer questions or ask questions too. But indigenous roots. So if some of you, are you familiar? How do you see any of the indigenous roots playing out in yerba mate, in the consumption of yerba mate?
Not me. I never saw it. Never.
I see it in the equipment a lot. Like in Paraguay, you see like this, like all the way they build these. They're very indigenous.
Yeah, right.
In a lot of the original equipment, like just the way they did you can see over there, they're handmade, made with alpaca, with very intricate woodwork, and those used to be like in Paraguay. The Guaraníes that are still living there live off of making like jewelry, making wampa, making these types of things. So they usually, you can see on the actual work done that there's, I mean, it's still them. That's how I see it in a lot of ways.
I think from what I understand, there has to be a particular, a very specific environment to grow the yerba mate. I am from the south of the country, and the south of the country is too dry and too cold to grow it. Basically, the microclimate that is in the north of Argentina, in a little bit north of Uruguay, and south of Brazil, and all Paraguay, I understand, is kind of the microclimate that you need with the right humidity and not too cold, not too hot, or super hot in the summer. But anyway, in the south, even though the Indians of the south are called the Mapuches, the Indians of the south haven't produced it, but they incorporated it very early on, and I think that in part because the mate is one of the very few drinks who transcend every kind of barriers, from social, economical. Even there was, when I was a child and HIV started to be kind of a big issue, there were a couple of doctors gathering with HIV patients to say it's not going to be contagious. I'm going to share my mate with all these HIV patients. So I think that what the mate has is that transcends all sorts of any kind of social class that you want to imagine, sexual orientation, economics, social, it doesn't matter. So I think that that's one of the things that I see within the Indians. It's the only time that as white people, we have something in common with them, is the mate. So it's going to be the thing that is going to start any kind of conversation with the indigenous people.
That is the issue of very few people will, make the direct connection. We are drinking something that has indigenous roots, has been nationalized, or the same way that feijoada, the black beans to Brazil, has been nationalized.
Right.
It started as the food for the slaves, and now is a national dish. So this is our national drink, and maybe we need to start paying royalties to the indigenous communities of Latin America. What we do.
Well, look, after all the enormous percentage of the foods consumed in Latin America and exported very early to Europe are of indigenous origin. I've heard as high as 90% are of indigenous origin. That seems to me to be perhaps a bit high, but nevertheless, an enormous percentage of foodstuffs are of indigenous origin. And we see that in the vocabulary. Because, for example, as European as Argentine Spanish might be, there are long lists of words of indigenous origin of the foods that are consumed. Because there were, ananá, palta, because there simply were no Spanish words, so you just took the indigenous words.
But if they had to recognize that it came from an indigenous origin, then they would not.
Oh, of course, yes, exactly.
You see, because there is
Exactly.
that too.
That's right,
No?
definitely.
Indígena está postergado, and you know.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
There is a very important Argentine anthropologist, Carlos Martinez Sarrasola, whom I worked with in the 90s. And he is, among many other things, investigated the indigenous roots of mate. There's a very important Tupi Guarani legend, actually more a parable about where it comes from, because it's supposed to be a gift of the moon goddess who came down to earth as two women and gifted mate to a hunter, I think this is very significant, who did not kill too many animals. He's supposed to be a good hunter, you could say he's a sustainable hunter. So he's supposed to have saved the moon goddess divided into these two women from the attack of a jaguar, but then he didn't kill the jaguar because there was no need to kill the jaguar, and as a gift, it's a very beautiful legend. The legend actually is written down as early as the late 17th century. So it may be completely Tupi Guarani, or it may be a bit of a hybrid, but there are definite roots that you can look at there. It's not so vague.
What was the name of the anthropologist?
Carlos Martinez Sarrasola. And the book, if you want to look at it, is Nuestros Paisanos los Indios, which is a famous quote from San Martin.
I think in part two, well, I'm not sure of the sources, but you always hear stories, people saying, because the Guaraníes, they believed in one God, or kind of like a God and an evil. And so when the Spanish came, they tried to put their religion or spread their religion. And because the Guaraníes have so much similarities in believing in God and things like that, it was easier for them to integrate compared to, I guess, the Mayans and the Aztecs, where there were more killings, I'll say.
The Mayans also believe in one God, called Itzamna. What you're saying about the Tupi Guarani is true. It's one God and it's Tupac.
Yes.
And everything else is just a manifestation of Tupac.
So yeah, I guess they integrated better. They weren't that, I don't want to say they weren't killings, but it was...
Well, the Spanish did a lot of killing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
So how does, there's like the little tea bags there, but what's going around in the bombilla or wampa, you're calling them too, the little round things, that's, you put it in and then you just leave that in there all day and you just keep adding water and it changes?
No, you have to keep on adding the stuff too, though.
Yeah,
You
you
change
change
it
it
out.
each time it gets washed. Usually this is kind of a sin to have a glass mate. But the only reason that my mom bought me one of these it was for my American friends, so you can see what's going on. So that's why I chose this one. That is part of my collection. Usually they all have a. You can look at. The
Oh, it's
words,
hot.
but yeah, because it's hot. This is we're drinking hot water right now.
So you put this in here, you put the water in here, and then
You
when the
put-
water's gone, you have to pour all this green stuff out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Basically, no. This is the leaves, right? And you can imagine this for Americans, they feel that we are throwing away marijuana when they see empty leaves because of the leaf, right? So you put it here, you put water, right? Then you drink it. The straw has one hole in the...
Got a filter.
The straw has one hole over here and too many holes in the bottom. Okay?
So you don't get the...
Exactly. So you drink just the water and then you pour again and then you pass it around and you pour again. There's going to be a moment that the leaves are not going to have flavor anymore.
Okay, so
And that's
do
when
use
you
the
emptied it.
Okay.
And then there is a lot of codes with the mate. I mean, part of the code in
Code?
Code. Like, for example, you don't move, my American friends, tend to do like, what is this? You don't move the straw. I mean, if you move the straw, I kill you. Okay? Exactly. So you don't move the straw. That's part of the code.
I didn't move it.
No,
Because it can close
so-
everyone.
if you say thank you, that means that you don't want anymore. So people usually, if you say thank you, I will pass you. The next time. Okay, that's part of the code. If you are talking because
So
it's
we have a
conversation,
Uruguayan there?
right?
No.
People will tell you stop using it as a microphone.
Stop using what?
As a microphone, right? So that's another thing that, and if you give it to the person that is not serving, then they will kiss it in the butt and then pass it. That's part of the card.
The person that's not drinking it.
Exactly. So the person that is not pouring the water.
Oh, okay.
If by mistake, let's say that we're a group of 10 people, right? And she is pouring the water, and by mistake I give it to you empty, then you will say, oh, I'm not pouring, and then give it back to her. Okay? So, but if you want to see leaves and then.
So we have another question here.
It's more than a question. I just want to make a comment. I'm from Bolivia, and I'm in the studies for the Andes. But I want to be a voice of South of Bolivia because we drink mate too. And it's like, I was very fortunate to work with, when it was the start of the Gran Pueblo Guarani. And I was at many meetings, the indigenous Guaranis, and they proved that I can be part of the community and be part of, to be participating with my ideas, because I was coming from the city and I was coming from La Paz, Cochabamba, to learn how to drink mate. And I think that is like Dr. Foster said, no? There's the south of some of the states, like in Bolivia, no? Like Gran Chaco, but Bolivia also drinks mate. Some of the south states or cities, the small cities of Gran Chaco drinks mate. It's a traditional because it's Guarani based, and it's very respectable because it's community, and it's,
And especially during the colonial period, a lot was going to Bolivia, to Peru. That's at least what the Paraguayans were saying. I haven't tracked the quantities, but there was, and there are images of people in the Andes consuming yerba mate, also in Chile. And still today, people in Chile consume yerba mate.
And
like
for,
mapuches, right?
and for this for this enormous consumption, you understand one of the metaphors for the yerba mate is el oro verde, green gold, because there are enormous profits made off of the cultivation of mate, because it is so widely consumed.
First of all, I want to thank you for this. This is really a lot of fun and a lot of really interesting information. So I'm hearing a lot about how this beverage functions as a social lubricant and how it brings together everybody universally and kind of levels every playing field. But I wondered if there were also, I haven't heard much about like whether there are some kinds that are better than others, whether there are discriminating tastes about it, whether people distinguish this variety.
The best one is in
from that.
Paraguay. No way.
Well, now that we've settled that,
And then what are those characteristics? Better, talk a little bit about Brazil, because Brazilian is different, right?
Yeah, we do a little bit different actually. Our tea, the yerba, is totally different. Ours is very thin and green. That's how we like it. It's fresh as possible it can be. And what we do is ours is a little bit bigger, and we do like a cake. And all the mate is right here. So when you pour, every time you pour in a little bit of the mate. So it's always it's gonna be a little bit more for you. Always be tasted. So yeah.
Like we each region will have a different, they were tasting Argentinian style yerba, our colleagues from Paraguay, and they were like, I'm not sure if this, and if we taste the Uruguayan or the Brazilian, there are differences in the taste. I don't think that there is any competition in terms of mine is better than yours, it will
Or
not
even like
work.
from person, you know how people in the United States get all gourmet about stuff, you
Oh
know?
yeah, Brazil too. Brazil has like mine, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In Rio Grande do Sul, we have the state, and then have another state, Santa Catarina and Paraná. That's the three states drinking mate. And whatever is do Sul, it's Rio Grande do Sul. I don't take it from Santa Catarina. No way.
And just to answer a little bit more, it goes the flavor all the way, you know, the thing that I said is a capital sin to have a glass mate. Mate is the container. Because the typical one, and I brought some of my collection over there, it's a carved pumpkin, and the flavor stays longer and stays much more stronger. So if you know, sometimes I use some of the ceramic ones or the glass ones, and my Argentinian friends would say, oh, you became Americanized. It's because even the type of container that you use, the type of straw that you use, and the material of the straw, it could vary. But also within the yerbas, and you were asking about the gourmet, in Argentina you can buy a kilo for $30, and you can buy a kilo for $5. So there is kind of the very poor, cheap version, and you have like the super high, fancy version as well. So even within the same country, you're going to have the very gourmet that is, oh, and then Argentina can go home, and when I serve them, they're going to say, oh, this is good. Which one are we having today? It's almost like when you open a bottle of wine, just by the taste. But it's also, according for my non-Argentinian friends, it's an acquired taste. They found it very hard. I mean, and I say non-Argentinian because I include the Indians, Taiwanese, Americans, Germans. They found it very strong. This is stronger than the green tea.
Yeah.
So they find it very strong for someone to acquire the taste. My kids, my 1-year-old kid drink mate, and mate was his fourth word. It's like mate, right? But it's something that's part of the culture and who we are. So I don't know.
In Paraguay, I heard people saying like, oh, Argentinian yerba is not good for tereré, but it's just because they don't like it. But then when they're drinking mate, it's okay. It's for hot water, yes, it's good. For cold.
For example, our tereré, they will kill us because our tereré is cold mate, but we kind of innovate it. So we put cold orange juice in the leaves.
What?
And we try to spread too. It's so good. Well, they will kill us, right? But then it's like, oh my God, that's our drink, and you are putting all these toxic things into it. So then you have all the.
They make cocido in Paraguay.
Is that just a Paraguayan thing, the cocido thing? You guys?
No, Argentina, we do the mate cocido.
You cook the yerba.
Because I grew up, like in my house, there was no coffee, like ever. Like all we had was cocido, which is the yerba mate. Like my mom used to like put it in a pan, and like it was awful because it like the smell was so strong and it's so smoky. Sometimes she had to even do it outside because it was so like. So it literally burns the yerba on a pan, and then use that as you use like, you know, instant coffee. You know, like you put it and but you do that, you put that in a filter, like in a coffee pot filter, and you make, you know.
When I was at the Peace Corps volunteer, they would actually put a piece of charcoal,
Yeah,
you know, with
yeah,
fire,
at home too.
put the charcoal in there, and I thought it was lovely. It's a great kind of smoky taste.
Right, exactly. It's just so like, but I made people try it, and it's like drinking sand. Like it's so, it's such a, like if you're a coffee drinker, like you would never go for cocido. It's like.
So Joao brought some Brazilian yerba, which I'm not used to, and as he said, or I haven't seen before, and he talked about how it was greener and different. So one of the things is also they tend to have these larger gourds and a different kind of bombilla.
Someone has, like this one has gold on it. It's because the germs.
I'm going to pass this around. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I had a question. You talked about the gourmet, and I'm new to yerba mate, but I buy it at Sprouts. And they have it in the tea bags. nice. But is it obscene that they have a version infused with chocolate? So it's yerba mate chocolate, and it has the mixture of the chocolate flavor. Is that like inauthentic, or should I stay away?
Yes, but I think that it has become, for example, in Argentina, the last time that I was there, I was in March, and I almost died when I saw in the grocery store Coca-Cola with yerba mate. I was like, what? It was the thing that oh my god. It was bad.
Well, one of the things they sell on the beach in Copacabana is mate limon, which is a combination of lemonade and mate.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Today you could have your mate, your ice cream. There are things that we never saw when we were kids. So you have
So it is spreading
latte,
into other
you
flavors.
have cookies with mate. People can innovate
In
and make
Paraguay,
money out of everything.
The Coca-Cola company try to come up with a flavor of soda.
Right.
So
Yeah, the yerba mate Coca-Cola, that's the one that we had.
Well, yeah, Selvatica, it was like a type of guarana type soda, because we have guarana, which by the way doesn't happen here, but Selvatica was like literally. It's very, yes. But anyway, Selvatica was like a pure, like a soda made out of yerba mate that literally lasted for like, I think a year. And then it just completely vanished because nobody would buy it.
So you can find here, this is the coffee flavored yerba that you can find. And then when I was in Japan, in one of their vending machines was Latin biorhythm mate, play, eat, drink mate, Coca-Cola product.
Right. So, and just to answer your question, when my mom comes, she brings a flavor of each, right? Like, oh, one with lemon peels, and one with orange peels, and one with mint. When my Argentinian friends come home here and I give them one of them, it's like, oh, don't give me this, give me the real one. And that means like the one that is pure without all the flavors, but right now you can find all sorts of flavors that you want.
In Paraguay, there's people actually selling, you walk on the street and la yuyera, like a big basket.
It's like a lady that just does that.
Just sells herbs for the mate or the tereré. Normally, the most common one is mint.
Yes.
Mint, and just put mint and lemon on the tereré.
There was
the lemon peel.
I remember back when I was back in 6th grade, my mom used to send me on Saturday mornings to La Yuyera, which is this lady in the market area that I used to go to, and she knew all my family for some reason. This lady would ask you. This lady would ask you how you were feeling that day. Are you feeling did you sleep well? Did you have any dreams? She would prepare stuff for you. She had this table it was almost this big of just a bunch of herbs. And she would just mix everything, and she has this little thingy, and it's just this little mortar thing. And she put it in she prepared the whole thing for you. You just take your equipment to her and she does everything. But it was and that's all she did. And it's so popular. There used to be a line in front of her.
Kathy, one time I drank enough coffee to cause my eye to twitch. And I'm just wondering, is there a language of caffeine addiction surrounding this, a vocabulary you have, you're drinking too much, or someone starts...
Well, I don't know how scientific this part is, but what you get with mate is very slow release of mate, that is similar to caffeine, but so you don't get in espresso shots that high of caffeine. What mate gives to everybody studying at night is that steady notion that you are awake and that you feel, well without peaks of caffeine.
For example, I drink mate 3 times a day. My last one is between 10 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. At my midnight or 1 a.m. I'm sleeping. And I drink it just because it's a habit. So some people tell you, oh, if I drink a mate after 5 p.m., then I'm not going to be able to sleep. It doesn't happen to me, it doesn't happen to my husband, and it doesn't happen to our friends. So I think that it depends. But it's not an addiction, oh, I need my coffee in the morning because otherwise I'm going to be grumpy. It doesn't happen.
Let's try that. What happened to you if you go to a conference and you don't take your mate with you for more than 5 days?
I don't become aggressive, really.
Yeah, but she's in the middle of, the Parthenon, sees a
I
mate
was
over
told.
there and run.
I was told, you know, when your bone is like.
I have one other question is, and also maybe you're Uruguayan, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you want to address this, and I don't know how to say this too well, but one of the things when I've lived in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and people talk about Uruguayans, or we're talking about yerba mate, they'd say, oh, you can always tell the Uruguayan because they carry around their whole equipo of yerba mate. And is there a sense of it all discrimination or something about yerba mate drinking, or that, because I wasn't sure about the tone when I would hear that.
It is envy. Argentinians envy Uruguayans that they can walk. This is something, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to walk. They have the thermos here, and they walk, pour the water and drink without putting all the mud on. We don't know how to do that. So I think it's envy. If there is a discrimination, it's for other reasons. But for mate, just pure envy.
It's a talent. I have to say that's exactly what my dad does all the time. He always has his thermo and his mate, and he just kind of does this little thing. And he was actually appalled when he came to visit me once, and we were going to a museum or something, and he had to leave his mate outside of the museum. He carries it everywhere, everywhere.
I have a question for you.
For me.
Yes, because you sound very American.
Okay.
You're,
Well,
so
yeah. Rest assured, you're.
I wish I had an accent. Swear to God. Yeah. No. Were you born and raised in Uruguay?
Yes, until I was 19, I lived in Uruguay.
Oh, okay. So.
My whole family's there, yeah.
Okay, so do you still drink mate while being here?
I have my mate and my thermo, it's all, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I study with, because, it also, to the other question before, I think what I've read, also, I don't know how scientific this is, but what I've read is that it doesn't affect the nervous system in the same way that caffeine does. So it doesn't give you the same kind of jitters.
Right.
So I drink it all afternoon and all night. When
Maybe
I'm
that's why
sick.
we can drink it for literally all day and
Yeah,
it
right.
doesn't. There's no. You need to pee a lot.
But also, I have it here. I've learned to put the yerba in my check bag and not my carry-on because people get confused.
Yeah, of course. Tell my parents when they are coming with 20 kilos of yerba mate in the bag and they stop, when you're in the x-rays, like, okay, we need to inspect this line. Yeah.
I remember walking with a friend here, and I don't remember what city, but we were walking on the street drinking, and this guy was walking the opposite way. He stopped, turned around, came back, and put his finger inside, like, oh, okay.
So I would love to continue this conversation, but I know people have other things to do. If there is any other question, I can take another question, or we can continue the conversation. You can continue the conversation informally.
Baby bottles. Do you put in the baby bottles? Like the Coca-Cola, I see the baby bottles.
We don't use it.
Not yet.
He drinks from the mate because he wants to imitate what the rest of the family does, but
They
not
have
from the
baby
bottle.
mates though.
Little
Yeah.
bombillas.
So we can take samples that are.
Yeah, whatever is there, you can take, and then I'm going to do the drawing for the generously donated, something like $40 each for this is what Guayaquil sells for these gourds. So the first person is Samuel Jackson. Here you go. If you don't want it, you can offer it to your, someone sitting near you.
Ask him his middle name.
Let's not go there, okay? Tanya Begay? Tiana. Oh, she left.
Good.
Okay, Michael Stoddard?
He also left.
He also left. All right.
But she knows all of them.
And Madison Bird? All right. Assistant? Okay. Jose Juan, all right. And Norma Lopez? Oh, she just left, oh, okay.
Ni modo, no.
Tamara, all right. Okay. And I think it gives you, does anybody want to explain how you, how you treat the gourds? What's the process for treating the gourds before you use them?
Don't wash it with soap. Ever. Ever.
My dad has kind of a weird thing that first he dumps the mates in cognac, right? And he let it absorb, and that basically avoid the bacteria growing in the mat. And you have to let it stay for a month. Basically, it's gonna absorb, and then you pour again, and it's gonna absorb, and it's gonna pour. And then you wash it, and then you use it.
I'm sure they tell.
I have another weird social question.
Americans don't. It's from
Like,
That's
like,
something
in America, people will like famous celebrities that don't tip. Is there any like sort of like social or like pop cultural element, like he didn't share, he refused to share mate with someone, or
In Paraguay, this is not, we're not big in sensationalism.
or like it doesn't come up like different political
But
groups.
funny enough, though, we do have a program like kind of like you know they have like morning shows here. Well, all morning shows in Paraguay, they're always drinking on the table. Like, it's a thing.
The film, you're gonna show the film?